for a while, and this session is pretty much for those people who already know me and those people who just recently found out that I exist. And today we're going to speak about reaching native-like level. Look, the first myth I'm going to debunk is that everyone who tells you how to speak like a native speaker, if you have just started learning a language, or let's say if you have been learning a language for a while, for many years since school, or even if you have lived in an English-speaking country already for a while and you still have an accent, right? Or you're still looking for ways to improve your English. If like you feel that, oh my God, all these years of learning English do not really bring any results because I still sound like a Russian. If your first language is Russian, that people still ask me, like, can you repeat? I don't understand. Or you ask people all the time, what did you say? Can you repeat? If this is the situation, please don't give yourself a task and don't set a goal for yourself. I want to speak like a native speaker. All these promising videos and titles, how to speak like a native speaker, are not going to work for you because first you need to learn the basics. If you, after so many years of learning English, are still struggling with like understanding people or learning new words, if you still ask questions like, how do I think in English? How do I stay motivated? I'm just reading your questions that you asked before this live video. How do I learn new words? How do I remember new words? How do I deal with native speakers' feedback that they don't understand me? How do I deal with all that? If you're struggling with that, then something is missing in the basics. Really, because the fundamental basics of learning language, if you have not mastered them, something is missing. And instead of trying to master some secret techniques to speak like a native speaker, you should go back to basics and you should fix that. Whatever part is missing, develop it, build it, learn it. This is my point. And look, I work only with people who already speak a decent English, let's say, and all my programs are already in English. But every day I find out that with different people in different situations, certain parts are missing, and we go back, we fix that part that is either broken or missing, and then a person can go very fast towards the next level. However, if you push yourself to the next level all the time, and every time you find yourself coming back to the level where you've been before, something is not working, fundamentally is not working. This is why the basics is really important. But again, when I say the basics, I do not mean you have to go back to English books, whatever books, I don't know, you know, English File or whatever. Jesus, I was years before I was teaching English, and I had to use all those books because the schools where I was teaching, they would tell me, no, you cannot use anything else. We have books and you have to use them. And all those books, you know, chapter 1, travel into space, who needs that, right? So and then people were like, do I really need to study that? And I was asking myself that question, how is that traveling to space help me? How is that going to help me understand people better? When I say go to basics, it doesn't really mean learning grammar or learning the words that you don't know, or learning more words, or coming back to English books, or doing Raymond Murphy exercises. Not necessarily, because when you do not exercise a systematic approach, you go back to whatever you know, and you think that this is the basics, so you go back to that and you start doing that all over again, even if it didn't help in 10 years ago. Like your teacher told you have to do this book, and you go back to that book, maybe to the Murphy exercises. Even if they didn't help 10 years ago, you still go back to that because this is all you know, right? And it's not really helping. Going back to basics, it means, look, understanding where you individually don't understand something. This is why all my courses have individual feedback, because there is no course in the world, there is no book in the world, there is no program in the world that will work for everyone. There is a structure, and we're all human beings, and we have the same body, and we live on the same planet, and there are universal concepts that work for all of us. At the same time, we're all very different. We're all unique. We're born with unique characteristics. Some people hear better. Some people write better. Some people visually, remember things visually better. And some people focus on different things. Some people cannot focus at all. You can tell the same thing 10 times to the same person and they simply don't see it because the focus is missing. And they're focusing on the things that are not important, but they look important to them. And that's why they're missing the whole picture, the big picture. So understanding where you individually need to focus on what you need to fix, this is the basics. This is what I mean. And reaching the level of a native speaker here is the wrong task. But look, I also have an accent, slight accent. Whenever I travel, people struggle understanding where I come from, and usually I hear comments like, which private school did you go to so that you developed such a weird accent? So people cannot place my accent geographically, and because I understand everything very well and I respond very quickly, and I respond with humor, with jokes, and I understand all the slang and everything, so people think I'm from their culture, but yet they hear that I sound differently, but they cannot necessarily place it. So I still have an accent. And I don't tell anyone that I'm a native speaker. Some non-native speakers think that I'm a native speaker, but I'm not. And I don't think there is any shame about that, that it's shameful or something. But this is why I don't promise anyone that you're going to speak like a native speaker, but you can reach native-like level. Native-like level is different from a native speaker. And look, I have met people in my life who do sound like a native speaker. They are either born in the English-speaking country, in one of the English-speaking countries. Probably they were raised in an English-speaking country. Maybe they moved there when they were a kid. So if a person has spent more than 10 years in an English-speaking country and they went to school there and they arrived in a country when they were little, when they were kids, then it's possible they start speaking like a native speaker. However, this year in Malta, I met a girl from Ukraine, and I thought she's British because she sounded just like a Londoner. Really, I would never be able to tell the difference. And everyone around me thought the same thing. They thought she's from London. And turns out she's from Ukraine. She speaks fluent Russian, of course, but she speaks English with an incredibly beautiful London accent. Because she didn't go to school there, but she did her bachelor's there, and I think her master's. So she has spent the last 6 years in the UK. So she's probably naturally gifted for that, and she really, really loves that. And she's a professional dancer, so she hangs out with a lot of dancers there. And so that was impressive. Concept number one that I want you to understand. Whenever you see a video or a course that says speak like a native speaker, think twice. Okay? And I would go and check how many students who accomplished that course became native speakers. Probably you're not going to find any. But reaching native-like level, if your English is already good, but you're still struggling with some pieces, this is very possible. If you go back to basics and you fix the basics. The first question was how to stay motivated. It's I think it's a question that everybody asks, but my answer is surround yourself with people who motivate you. And surround yourself, it doesn't mean subscribe to their Instagram, it means really talk to them. Motivation, I only believe in intrinsic motivation because you're motivated by your own results. When some things start getting better and you notice that, and other people around you notice that, you want to do more. However, most people stop before they achieved any result. This is one kind of people. And, other kind of people, they stop once they have achieved something one time and they stop. Okay, that's it. And then they go and tell everyone, look, this is what I have achieved. And that's it. But they cannot replicate that. They cannot repeat that. Confidence comes when you know your stuff. It comes from knowing your stuff. The same applies to public speaking. If you know your stuff, it's very easy to speak in public, and you don't care if millions of people are listening or one person is watching. It doesn't really matter. You simply do your job because you know your stuff. How do you know that you know your stuff? It means you have done it many times over the course of time, and every time successfully. And it's not just your opinion, it's a fact. You have done it for many, maybe years successfully. All right? And years is a key word here. Confidence doesn't come from one course or from one month of work on something. it comes from consistency. When you consistently do something over the course of time, but most people want to achieve confidence just like that, in one day or in 1 month. So when you know your stuff, you're confident. When you have accomplished something 1 time or 2 times, what happens? You start doubting yourself. You're not really confident because yes, it happened 1 time or maybe once or twice, but I'm not really sure I can do it the 3rd time or the 4th time. And here is where you start doubting yourself. And if you're doubting yourself, it's not confidence. When I am confident, when I know my stuff, I don't care how many people are watching. And my focus is on my work. My focus is on my message. If I doubt myself and I'm not sure that I am really good at what I'm doing and that I can do what I'm doing, my focus is not on what I'm doing or what I'm speaking. My focus is on other people's opinions. My focus is on all those people who are watching me. Are they going to notice that I made a mistake? What if I have just made a mistake? How are they going to take my words? Are they going to understand me? Are they going to think I'm a professional? Are they going to think I'm a good human being? So your focus is somewhere else. And this is the problem. So most people just don't have the patience to build that confidence. And you stay motivated when you surround yourself with people who already have that result. And when you surround yourself with people who pretty much motivate you, I also learn new things all the time. And I also have been there. I did something, it happened once, I got my first result, yay, good, awesome. And then I stop not because I lose motivation, not because I am not sure that I want to continue, but simply because I don't know how to continue. And I'm kind of stuck, so I did something once, but how do I replicate that? I'm not sure. At the same time, I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to show to my teacher and my trainer that look, I already did it, right? How should I go and ask a teacher again? Can you show me how to do it again? It feels like it feels awkward, really. But this is the trick. So once you overcome that, and once you accept that the fact that you did something 1 time doesn't mean you have mastered it. Doesn't mean that now you're confident that you can do that. And it doesn't really mean you can do it. It only means that you have done it once. My courses have feedback, support, and I invite you guys to all the practical sessions. Most of them are free for those people who have already taken the course. This is why I keep sending additional tasks, and I never ever charge for communication. Like if you have misunderstood something, if you reach out, and there are so many people who have taken the course and they ask questions and they reach out and they ask me to explain something, I never charge for that, and I always reply. If you have taken the course and there is some exercise that you didn't understand, or you still have questions about something and you send me your work, I always give feedback. All right, so it's not a problem for me, absolutely, to reply. If you want an hour of my attention live in the same room with you, it's a different story, but replying to your questions, it's not an issue at all. And I honestly tell people where I learn things, and I introduce you to my own mentors and my own trainers, because this human communication really helps. When you see other people who have done it, when you see other people who are using the same resources, when you see other people who are also getting confident, this really helps. This is how you stay motivated, because if you surround yourself, if it happens so that you're surrounded by people who think that your English is fantastic just because they simply don't speak English. And they think that your English is fantastic. And every time at work they ask you, can you translate that? Can you write this email for me? Well, come on, it's easy for you. You speak English, right? So I don't speak any English. So if you're surrounded by people who think that you are amazing and your level of English is amazing, your level of English is probably better, but then better than what? Better than the level of those people who don't speak any English? Yes. Is this where you want to stay? If you really want to stay at that level, okay, no questions asked. And it's really hard to stay motivated when you don't see other good examples. But if you do want to move to a different level, it makes sense to surround yourself with other people and to actively communicate with them. Send me messages, send other people messages. This is why when I travel, every time, I don't know how that happens, but every time when I travel, I meet people like myself. Like I meet people who speak amazing English, even better than myself, and their first language would be Russian sometimes any other language, or sometimes Croatian. Like last time I traveled to Croatia, I met a person who speaks 4 languages without an accent, fluently, just fantastic skills. But Russians as well, because it's kind of hard for Russians because of this mentality and how we were brought up and how we used to learn a language, well, any foreign language at school. 11 years at school and you still don't speak any English pretty much. And when I lived in Germany, I was amazed that students in high school already, they do public speaking in the English language. Like their first language is German, but they do public speaking in English in high school. And they don't even ask questions, how do I do that? They simply do it. And they have to write papers in English. And even now in Russia, I think the situation is changing because in July, I was teaching 2 teenagers in my public speaking course, 16 and 18, and both spoke really good English. And the projects that they do at school, we were like, we were all very impressed because in my school days, I didn't do anything like that, nothing even close to that. So the situation is definitely changing. So I hope you got my point. Motivate yourself and find people who are better than you. Don't stick around people who think you're better, because if you're better than someone, always ask yourself better than what and better than who. If you're better than someone, it means everyone around you is worse. And I honestly would not want to be in this position. I want to be in the position where I'm equal, I'm at the equal level, and I can communicate as an equal. Or I look up to people. I mean, there are people who know things better than I do, and I look up to them. Then let's move to the next question. How do I learn new words? People who ask this question, how do I learn new words? When I ask them, how do you already learn new words? The answer is I don't. I'm looking for strategies to learn new words, but I don't actively learn them myself. Learning words, a list of words, is useless, absolutely useless. When we work with people in my public speaking courses or in my confident business writing courses, the same situation repeats itself. People come with good English skills, they know a lot of words, but then they don't know how to use them. And a lot of times it happens so that a person speaks very confidently, loud, confident speech, but about nothing. Really, like a person is very confident, but what are you actually trying to say? The message is not clear. Either because the person cannot connect the words properly, because he or she is a native speaker and it's just a bunch of words uttered in a very confident manner, but it makes no sense, or the person cannot really articulate the gist, the essence of the message. So it's just a lot of beautiful, long sentences about nothing. And we still don't, the person doesn't get to the point. That's the problem. If you don't know the words and how to connect them, you cannot get to the point either. But if you do know words, the problem remains. You can still find yourself in a situation where you don't get to the point quite quickly. All right, so you learn words through music, pictures with quotes, and from TV shows. Okay, what is actually to learn a word? So what does it mean? You watch a movie, you see a word. Okay, what do you do with it? You watch a movie and you saw a word. Does it mean you learned a word? You watch a YouTube video which is called 50 most common phrasal verbs in English. You watch the video, you saw the spelling of all 50 words. Does it mean that you learned 50 words? Or you listened to the song and you heard some word, maybe you even looked it up. Does it mean you learned the word? What is the definition of learn? How do you know and when do you know that you actually learned the word? Because from this definition, a comment that a person has written, it's not clear. Did I see a word or did I learn a word? So if you can clarify yourself, that would help. the basic principle that you have to remember is that we learn by repetition. This is why any strategy that can promise that you can learn 50 words, 100 words, 200 words, whatever, it's not working, it's not effective, and it's not sustainable, because you can train your memory, but we never use our memory when we speak. We use different mechanisms in our brain. And if you memorized 100 words, it does not absolutely mean that you can at any time use any of those 100 words in a conversation. Absolutely not. This is why memorizing words and learning words so that they become a part of your active vocabulary, that this is two different stories. So, it can be movie with subtitles, and I know, what does it mean? Okay, so then it's not learning new words, because if you're watching a movie and if you see the subtitles and you see the word that you already know, okay, so you recognize the word, you know it, you heard it somewhere, maybe you even looked it up in the dictionary, and now you start thinking, how can I use this word? Okay, what's next? Do you actually start using it? And does it, so the process is this: I saw the word, I recognized the word, I started thinking about the word. Does it mean I learned the word or not? Right? So you see, look at your algorithm. You see it, you recognize it, you start thinking about it. Okay, so what if you see 10 words in 10 minutes that you like and you know them, but you don't use them actively? Does it mean that you learned 10 new words? My strategy of learning words is actually, the person is doing a very good job. It's just the person is doing half of the job correctly. If you do that, what the person has just described, but you still feel that your vocabulary is not enough and you cannot articulate your message, and you find yourself struggling and looking for words and translating every word in your head every time, it means something is not working, right? So, when you understand the meaning of word means learning. Honestly, I don't understand this comment. What does it mean? When you understand the meaning of word means learning. And this is again what I mean. Like, a person knows words, a person put together words, but it makes no sense. Like, what does this sentence really mean? A native speaker would definitely not understand it. And I think I do, because I know what we're talking about, and I know how Russians think, because I also think in Russian, but a native speaker would not get it. Try to reformulate this question. Katya, I think, who sent it. Try again. Send this message again. Send this comment again. And let's see how you can formulate it better. Because this is the illustration of a problem. You know the words, you put them together, but you don't get a sentence. You get a bunch of words. And what is frustrating about that is that when you use this strategy to speak, you're pretty much giving me a job to make a sentence out of your words. And I don't want you to give me a job, and nobody likes that, right? I'm just going to tell you a story, okay? So in 2014, so that you get it, in 2014, I visited Angola for the first time. It's the first African country I've been to. I had to do all the vaccinations and everything, so it was pretty exciting. And I went there, and the language that the locals speak in Angola is Portuguese. It's not English, so really few people understand English. But there are a lot of American companies there, because the main business in Angola is oil and diamonds. And a friend of mine was working for an American company, oil company, and there was a whole compound for Americans where they would live in proper apartments, and they would of course speak English. Every morning, a local taxi driver would pick them up to bring them to the office, and the taxi drivers didn't speak any English. I mean, they spoke Portuguese. Americans didn't speak Portuguese, right? So they had to communicate. And of course, taxi drivers had to learn some English. So in the morning, my friend and I were leaving the house, because I was staying with them, and there were like 3 or 4 taxi drivers waiting for us and for his friends who were staying in the same area. And he said, well, let's take John today. Let's go with John today. I was like, why? How does it matter? Is the car better? He said, no, the driver is better, because John speaks okay English. I thought, well, okay English, what does it mean? And I was sitting in the car, and John said something, I cannot even repeat it, but something like, so, road, hello, office, go, something like that. So pretty much okay English means a person can give you words, but it's your job to make a sentence out of those words. And then that was the moment, I still remember, it was so funny. I understood that was the definition of okay English. And an American person said that he speaks okay English. I mean, I can make a sentence out of those words. I think I can, if we know the context. So be very careful. Learning new words is a great idea, but it's even better to learn how to connect these words in proper sentences. This is why when you learn new words, don't worry about how many words you want to learn. It doesn't really matter. I recommend like 1 or 2 max in a situation. I even like 3 is too much, okay? So 1 or 2. But if you master this 1 or 2, then it means you really, really understand how to use them in the context and how to use them in your situation, how these 2 words can help you articulate your message. So learning to connect the words is more important. This is why whenever you see a word, pay attention to what is before the word and what is after the word. So the strategy that a person just shared with us, that she's doing a great job. Look at what she's doing, and I actually like this method. She doesn't learn new words. She pays attention to the words that she already knows, right? Because if she didn't know the word, she would never understand the meaning of this word in the subtitles or in the song. We cannot identify what we don't know, right? So if a song is playing and you let's imagine a Chinese song, right? If I don't understand any words, I'm not going to hear anything. And if you're listening to the song and you recognize some words, you're going to hear them. And that's a very good strategy. Instead of trying to learn as many new words as possible, first, pay attention to the words that you already know. You already know them. When you see the subtitles, you recognize them. You probably looked them up in the dictionary before. You probably heard them before. You even probably said them a few times. But remember what we spoke about in the beginning. You maybe did it once or twice. It doesn't mean you can do it yet very confidently. And you still you see this word. Yeah, I remember this word, but what exactly does it mean? I don't. So the strategy is correct. We just need to correct it even more. You see the word, you recognize the word, and then you start thinking about the word. Okay, how can I use this in my own situation? And here's when a person stops, because a person doesn't know, like, how do I do that? Okay, so how can I understand if I can use it in my own situation? You start thinking about it, but you don't finish the job. Finishing the job would be going to special resources and checking how native speakers use this word. This is my strategy. Learning new words, because most people, this is a very, very important point. Most people learn new words. This is how they learn new words. They look at the English word and they look at the Russian translation. They understand the translation and they think they learned the word. Then maybe the next day they read the translation again, English and Russian. Maybe they read it 10 times, English, Russian, English, Russian, English, Russian. Maybe the next day they do it again, English, Russian, English, Russian, and they think they learned the word. And they didn't, because once they are in the situation where they have to use that word, or where they have to explain some concept, some thought of theirs, they cannot remember that word, because they learned a word which is separate. They learned a word on its own, and they didn't pay attention to how this word is used in the language, in the combination with other words. This is why I always keep repeating that using Russian-English dictionaries or English-Russian dictionaries is a bad idea. It doesn't help you move forward, because then you rely only on the translation of the word. That's it. You don't know anything else. You simply know the Russian translation. But the trick here is that, let's say, if you use Multitram, right? If you use Google Translate, what's funny is that it gives you one translation, gives you one word. Even if the word has 10 meanings, you're going to get only one. But what if the word has 10 meanings, right? How can you make sure that Google Translate showed you the correct meaning? And then you start using this word given to you by Google Translate, and everybody around you still doesn't understand what you mean. Or the second scenario is when, if you use Multitran, let's say, it's a more professional dictionary, and a lot of people use it as a Russian English dictionary. And you're looking for the Russian word, and what happens is that Multitran gives you 123 variants. It gives you a lot. It's like a sheet, of words. And how do you understand which word is yours? Which word is actually correct here? You see? So this is why relying on the Russian translation rarely helps unless you're looking for some technical term or a legal term or something that you really cannot explain in the English language because it's even hard to explain in your first language. This is why I rely not on my first language, not on the translation into my first language. I always ask myself one question, and this is how I learn new words. Do native speakers say like that? I mean, do native speakers use this word? And if they do use this word, how do they use it? Which words can this word go together with? Can it go together with this preposition? Does it have to be in the beginning of the sentence? Can it go at the end? This is the kind of question that I ask myself every single time I think I want to say something, but I'm not sure. And confidence comes from knowing that I definitely have heard many times how native speakers use that phrase, that word combination. And I definitely can remember millions of times where I saw this word combination written down in New York Times or somewhere else, written by native speakers. The only question I ask myself, do native speakers say that? If yes, how do they do that? That's it. I don't care if there is a translation in my first language or not. I don't care how accurate Google Translate is because it's 99% never accurate, really. And so the person who wrote that comment, you're doing a very good job, just half of it, right? So forget about the words you don't know. If you start with paying attention to the words that you already know, but you never use them for whatever reason, you will already move forward quite fast. So whenever you see a TV show, or whenever you see the subtitles with a word that you know, or maybe you hear a word in a favorite song or in a podcast, stop here. Don't watch the entire movie, because if you watch a movie, and the movies today are long, they're like 2 or 3 hours, and like your head is full of like, okay, I heard so many cool words, and mistake number one, you can start thinking that you learned all the new words, but you didn't. You just heard them once, or you recognized them. Or you can feel overwhelmed and frustrated because you have heard so many cool words, but what is the way to remember them all? What is the way to start using them all? So what I do, I use the stop strategy. Whenever I heard something that I like, I stop. I stop the video, I stop the podcast, I stop doing whatever I was doing. Let's say if I'm reading an email and I saw an interesting word, or I'm reading a book, I stop. I stop doing everything else and I stop on this page. I stop the video, or I stop the audio. And I look at this word again, and I really try to understand it. And if I cannot understand it fully, then I go and use a dozen of resources. In my courses, I give so many resources on how you can check if native speakers actually say that. In one of the, if you have been to my YouTube channel, there is a video which is called Self-Correcting Algorithms. The number one resource that I recommend is Skell. It's Skell. Just simply Google Skell, because the website is long. It's something like skellsketchengine.co.uk, but if you type Skell, you will find it. And let's say I saw a word, I pay attention to which word is next to it, which word is behind it, and I look at the phrase, and I take this phrase, not just one word, never one word separately. I take this phrase and I put it on Skell. And Skell immediately gives me a bunch of examples of how native speakers use that word. And when I look at multiple examples, I can understand the context. And very often this context will be very different from what you imagine this word means. If you only use Google Translator, if you only use the Russian English Dictionary, you would never even, it's impossible to imagine it with a Russian-speaking brain, trust me. So when you use Skell and you study all the examples very carefully, you really understand the context, but it still doesn't mean that you have learned a word. It only means you understood how it can be used in some particular situation, maybe in several situations. And words it can go together with. And now, so you see, I'm continuing the strategy. The person says, I see it, I recognize it, I start thinking about it. So to continue this train of thought, we start thinking about it how. We look at the words that are together with that are next to this word, that are after and before, and we paste this phrase in scale, and we study the examples, and we try to understand the context. And I would also recommend going to English dictionaries to check the definition of the word, because if you teach yourself to understand definitions in English, believe me, your English skills are gonna like skyrocket. I like Merriam-Webster, but I also very recently I discovered that Cambridge Dictionary is a lot easier. So Cambridge Dictionary is a good one. So go and check the definition of the word that you have found or you have recognized on Cambridge Dictionary. So this is the next step. You study all the examples, and then the next step is actually to actively use it yourself. The next step would be to say this word out loud. And again, this is why English dictionaries are so cool, because there is this button where you can click and listen to the correct pronunciation of the word. Look, if you live in a non-English speaking country and you complain that I don't know how to improve my English skills, come on. All right, where's YouTube? English dictionaries, everything is online. You can listen to 200% correct pronunciation of any accent, Australian, British, American, whatever. I prefer American, but you choose. So the next step would be clicking on that icon and hearing the word several times. It may be 2, maybe 10, maybe 40, until you can repeat the same. A lot of times people listen one time and that's it, and they stop. No, you need to listen and say it, actively say it yourself. Listen and repeat until you actually understand that you can imitate that word, that you say it correctly. And this is not it. And the next step is actually using it in the sentence. We all probably remember this school task where a teacher would say, okay, we are learning new words today. Here is a list of words that you should know. Translate the words and create sentences with these words. This was the most boring task for me ever, because these are the words I don't care about. This is number one, I don't care about these words. Number two, I have to come up with some sentences, like fake sentences. I don't feel anything about them. And of course I will make a mistake, and of course she will correct me, and that was really very frustrating. So instead of doing that, my recommendation would be, if you go to Scale, make it your life easier. Listen to the pronunciation, and if you can use Scale or you can use Cambridge Dictionary. Cambridge Dictionary and Merriam-Webster, the American dictionary. If you scroll down, they give you examples. You can read the examples of sentences with this word. So study, or if you use Scale, you have dozens of sentences with this word. Choose the sentences that you like the most. I would say 5. Read them out loud. I have a video on here on IGTV on YouTube on how to read out loud, and I'm so proud of my public speaking group, the last 11th group, because they towards the end of the course they were reading amazingly well. That was so you could never tell that these people are reading. It sounds like they're telling the story in the English language. That was amazing. So check the video on how to read out loud and use the strategy to read these sentences. So instead of thinking, okay, how can I use this sentence myself? Make it easy. Choose the 5 sentences that you can relate to, because you will be given a lot of good examples, and read them out loud. And after that, trust me, ideas will arrive at your head, in here. They will come in here. You will arrive at ideas of how you can use this word yourself. Does this make sense? This is a very it sounds complicated. It has a lot of steps. This algorithm of how you really learn the new words, but if you really follow it, you will learn a lot of not just words, you will really learn to sound and to think like a native speaker. You will reach native-like level, because most people, they do step number 1, 2, and then they ask me, okay, how can I get to step number 10? You have to do 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then you get to step number 10. And most people don't have the patience, or if they remembered one word one time, they think they can do it. And if they cannot do it with all the other words, they feel frustrated. When they feel frustrated, they feel not confident. When they feel not confident, they start doubting themselves. When they start doubting themselves, they orientate, they start looking at other people looking for opinions, and they're afraid of judgment. And of course, they cannot present in public because they don't know their stuff. They think they know their stuff, but they don't know their stuff. Simply because they haven't done it enough. everything you want to learn takes time. Practice takes time. So my advice would be, try this algorithm that we have discussed today, and never, I mean, my advice would be to never take lists of words from people who think they know better. Like, I tried watching videos which say 50 most common phrasal verbs in the United States, or 100 words that you should know. I watch them and I forget them the next minute. Really, nothing really stays in my head unless I heard some of the words in that video before, and I can remember, oh wow, that word, I really saw that in the movie the night before, and now I can recognize it. So our brain is wired that way. We only pay attention to the words that matter to us. We only pay, like if you watch a video of 15 most common phrasal verbs, you will only, not even remember, you will pay attention to the words you have heard before. You will pay zero attention to the words that you have never heard before. Like, you will hear them once and it doesn't mean you learned them. You simply saw them once and that's it. This is why I don't like following somebody's recommendations, and I never give my students a list of words that they should know. In all my courses, people discover the words themselves and they bring them to me. Look what great words I have discovered today for myself. I never give them lists because it's your job and I don't know what is interesting for you. This is why the strategy that the girl here suggested it works really well. You have to surround yourself with English-speaking content, and then you choose what you pay attention to. Maybe it's a song, maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's a video, maybe it's a TV show, but you hear something that you recognize and you stay here and you pay attention, it means that's your word. It means like you like this word, but you also realize that you don't use it in your active vocabulary. It means you have to stop and do this algorithm. It means this is your word. I never allow anyone to tell me what words I need to learn, because then it's boring, and then the question arises, how do I motivate myself? How do I stay motivated? It's really not easy to stay motivated when you feel that someone is pushing you all the time and you don't enjoy what you're doing because you're not doing it yourself. Someone always reminds you that you're behind schedule, that you're not doing your work, that you are not bringing the results. How can you stay motivated when someone is reminding you that, it's you're not doing a good job? Therefore, instead, I like to surround myself with people who have achieved what I want to achieve, and I actively communicate with them. So what you guys can do, I'm always open. I reply to every single comment. I reply to every single message. If you have already taken my courses and you want to continue doing some exercises, and in all my courses you can download the audio instructions, the videos, the tutorials, and you will keep receiving videos and video tasks that you can download. So you can download them and do them anytime, and you can do the task anytime. It doesn't mean, it doesn't matter if I send the task a month ago, but you decided to do it only today and you send me your homework today, I will check it and I will get back to you. So active communication, and I always communicate in the English language, works a lot better than just following me on Instagram or following those people that you think they know better. What matters is your result, not their result. They're doing their job. Your job is to do your job, and your job is to be yourself. This is what matters. Go to my YouTube channel. There are 2 videos there, free live videos. They are called this way, live videos, about self-correcting algorithms, where I show you on the screen how to use Scal and how exactly I use it to check if my ideas in English are correct. So I meant when your active vocabulary is multiplying drastically by catching new phrases and memorizing meaning of it. Okay. We need to brush up your writing skills. So, I have a partner from South Africa. He helps me with the public speaking courses, and he tells this to me every time. Why do Russians like complicated words? I mean, if Russians decide to learn new words, it has to be something long, beautiful, sophisticated, and very complex. Like something like your active vocabulary is multiplying drastically. It's not like, nobody talks like that. And he says, like, what happens is that a person would come up to me, very proud of himself that he learned a new word, and tell me, "Can you ignite my cigarette?" And he would be like, "What?" Like nobody, you cannot say, I mean, in Russian, and this is the problem, in Russian, the word, if you translate the word ignite, it will be zажечь. If you translate the word cigarette, right, we know what cigarette is. And in Russian, it does make sense, and Google Translate will probably translate it that way. But in English, it means absolutely nothing. It's like, what do you mean, dude? And by the way, send me the correct variant of this one. What can you say instead of "Can you ignite my cigarette"? What's the correct English variant? Send it in the comments, or send it in the comments after the live video is over, because so that everybody can learn that as well. And how you discover it will actually show how you're thinking, and can you apply those algorithms of self-correcting yourself or not. This is why use more simple words. Actually, English is a very compact language. People use short sentences, simple words, and when you use simple words, you sound smarter. So when you use complex words, you sound weird. If you really want to make yourself heard and understood, short sentences, simple words, because people will appreciate it. I use English dictionaries in order to be able to explain unknown word by other words, in other words. Yeah, that's a good strategy to learn how to explain, even to yourself, how to explain some concepts in the English language. There was another question: how do I receive negative feedback from native speakers about my English or about my pronunciation? Look, negative feedback exists only in your head. I honestly do not know a lot of native speakers who will actively correct you. Usually they're very appreciative of the fact that you speak their language and that you're given effort. So I don't know many people who will correct, no, you said this wrong, this is wrong, don't do this, don't say it again. But if they do correct you, think about it's not negative feedback, it's corrective feedback. They correct you. And what happens to me, your boss can correct you, your boss can give you kind of negative feedback, you think it's negative because you didn't achieve your KPIs or whatever, but in fact it's corrective feedback. A person is helping you to correct your behavior. I always feel grateful to those people because they show me my mistakes. Okay, so let's say how do you say that? By other words. And a person told me it's in other words. Oh, okay, thank you. I write it down. In other words. And I try to say it at least 5 times. Okay, I have to learn to explain it in other words. And actually, if you put this phrase in scale, in other words, you will find out that a lot of sentences in the English language start with that. In other words, this means this and that. In other words, we're going to be late. In other words, this is not really what I want. And you will learn very quickly how to use this phrase because the context will give you so many situations, and I'm sure that you will remember some situations that have happened to you as well. And this is when we learn, because we feel that we're emotionally connected to that situation. This is why take it as corrective feedback and always thank a person, but don't just get upset about it. Really write it down, what they said, find the correct version, go on scale, listen maybe to the pronunciation, repeat it yourself, and say thank you that they helped you to learn a new word. Otherwise, you would just be walking around saying the incorrect phrase all the time, and they helped you to sound more polite, maybe more correct, and more English. All right. Negative feedback is, we take it as negative feedback because we have certain expectations, and expectations is why actually people are afraid of public speaking as well, especially in the English language. Expectations means we have certain expectations about ourselves and certain ideas about ourselves. I have to present, and it has to be beautiful. People have to applaud, people have to be happy, people have to promote me, people have to say thank you. And when you find yourself in a situation where you say one word and you feel stuck, or you hear yourself and you understand that your English suddenly became very elementary, so it's you do not match your own expectations, and this is a disaster for a lot of people. So negative feedback comes from the fact that we cannot deal with expectations. We have high expectations. Expectations are here. The ability to deliver is here. And a person doesn't understand that. So we don't understand where we are, and we demand too much from ourselves. And very often people expect themselves to be excellent without putting any work and without practicing anything. So work with the expectations, because there are three ways any situation can end. Things can get worse, things can get better, things can stay the same, and all three are correct. Really, all three can happen. So once you learn to accept three of them, and then you learn your lessons from each of them, it's going to get easier. Because if you didn't match your own expectations, it means it's time to go back to the basics and maybe correct a few things. What I was talking about in the very beginning, because especially those people who already live in English-speaking countries and they still struggle, and they've been learning English for so many years, and they're still at the same, they're still not moving anywhere, and they feel that they're stuck because they refuse to accept that and to go back to the basics in order to fix something. By the way, I'm from the north of Kazakhstan. I was born and raised there, and I actually received my teacher's degree in Kazakhstan. And then I moved to Germany, and I did my master's in Germany, and only then I moved to Moscow. I'm from the north of Kazakhstan, from Kostanay. If anyone is from that city, let me know. And if you guys have any questions, ask me after the video. And people really understand how much effort it takes it takes effort to learn a language. However, sometimes when I travel and I meet those people from Switzerland who easily speak 4 languages, it looks like it's effortless. Or when I listen to children who speak 4 languages, and they really make it look so effortless. So and look, today the world is becoming so much smaller, and it's becoming more and more normal to speak a foreign language. Unfortunately, in Russia, in the Russian-speaking community, it's still something outstanding. Wow, you speak another language without an accent. But it's not. It's just a skill. And if you invest in this skill, it pays off. Because every time I travel, I meet these amazing people who speak 2 or 3 languages flawlessly. And I'm like, wow, okay, I have to brush up my English. All right, thank you very much for joining. See you later. Bye.